Hey, Hampus, nice to see you.
Hey, Melinda. I'm just about to introduce you on stage, but I have some questions first. So, you're a commercial lawyer who fought for indigenous people and human rights. You worked for the oil industry, but you're now fighting against fossil fuel extraction in Guyana. You drafted the Constitution to protect the environment. So when Exxon announced in 2015 that they found oil offshore Guyana, you started the fight. You went to court and were able to cut down the oil giant's permits from 20 years to 5 years. And Guyana is a natural carbon sink, covered 80% by rainforest, which is all due to risk of rising sea levels. And then on top of that, the country's economy will be built on a dying industry, which puts the whole country at risk. So you add the right to a healthy environment as a human right to the national constitution. You repeatedly highlight that natural assets in today's economy only have a value when they're turned into tradable assets. How do we rewire the economy to incentivize preservation and restoration?
I think we have to change our relationship with the rest of the world and to see that human beings are completely dependent upon nature. It's not just something that we can exploit. Nature is something that we have to live in harmony with and value in itself. We can't survive without it. And the way to do that, I think one way, is actually to look at nature as natural capital and to treat preservation of nature as an investment that is going to bring returns in the future. I don't like treating living beings as natural capital or as assets, but if that's what works to ensure that they continue to live and to exist, then I guess that's what we have to do.
Yeah, that's true. And I mean, the strange thing here, there are few like you. You haven't been able to speak publicly about what you've done, really, but you even felt threatened and hindered. How do you feel now being even more public about it and on stage?
I think it's a fantastic opportunity. It's really, really important to get out there and tell the truth, both about the destruction that the fossil fuel industry is inflicting on this planet, and also on the alternatives that we have, different ways of doing things, so that we don't have to have an industry with a business plan that depends on trashing the planet.
Yeah, no, it's as easy as it sounds. I mean, I'm going to go out on stage now and introduce you in front of the whole excited audience. So see you very soon.
Great, thanks. See you shortly.
I hope you had a great lunch. And now we're going to hear from one of the few people that have changed a constitution in advance to make sure that we don't fuck up the planet. So please welcome Melinda Janki on stage.
What would you say if I asked you, of all of the amazing and wonderful work that you're now doing, what's the thing that makes you feel the most proud? If you asked me the same question, I'd probably say that it was reducing the share price of ExxonMobil by 12%. So let me explain. As Hampus mentioned, I'm a lawyer, and I'm in court fighting ExxonMobil and the government of Guyana against oil and gas. And earlier this year, I was in Guyana, in South America, and I came across an article in a British newspaper, The Guardian. It was commenting on a court case that I had recently won. This is the 6th of 7 cases that I've filed against Exxon's drilling. And this is what The Guardian said. Since news of the ruling broke, ExxonMobil's share price has dropped 12%. If you look at their shares, they have more than 4 billion shares. A drop in 12% knocked more than $40 billion off their value at that moment. Now, I know many different things go into making up the share price, But I like to think that The Guardian and the rest of the international press were making a serious point when they said that our victory in court had an impact on ExxonMobil. And that court victory tells us something really important as well, and it's not how to use the clicker, but anyway. And that is that even a big and powerful corporation like ExxonMobil is vulnerable. We just have to know the right way to use the law. Now, this wasn't a climate change case. It was a case about money and pollution and who cleans up the mess. And we said, by law, ExxonMobil is liable if there's an oil spill. And they said, no. If there are any lawyers in the room, you might be as surprised as I was by the judge's reaction. He said, Esso Exploration and Production Guyana Limited, which is ExxonMobil in Guyana, was engaged in a disingenuous attempt which was calculated to deceive when it sought to dilute its liabilities and settled obligations. Judges don't usually use such strong language. All of us today are deeply concerned about climate change, and I bet we're all ready to do whatever it takes to stop climate catastrophe. Many of us, and I include myself here, have worked for years to protect the climate. In 1996, I drafted a new law for Guyana, the Environmental Protection Act, and when I did it, I defined the environment to include the climate and the atmosphere so that national law would protect both. But just look at where we are today. Parts of the earth are literally on fire. Other parts are flooded. People are dying. Animals are dying. Forests are dying. How is that possible when we're all working so hard to protect the climate? So I began to ask myself, what have I missed? And it was during this fight against Exxon's drilling that I realized I'd missed something really obvious. We don't have a climate problem. We have a problem of greenhouse gas pollution. Greenhouse gas pollution from the fossil fuel industry is killing the planet. Climate change is a symptom. Why did it take me so long to realize this? Well, the fossil fuel industry are liars. In Stella's brilliant keynote this morning, she just exposed the tricks the fossil industry uses. And there's something else that we need to talk about. The fossil fuel industry is hiding the truth in plain sight, right in front of us. And they're doing it by using language. Now, I'm a lawyer. Language is important to me. Language is powerful. We all know if you burn coal or oil or gas, you get greenhouse gas emissions, and that's making the earth hotter, and that's affecting the climate, and that's what we call climate change. Why are we focusing on the symptom, climate change, and not on the problem, greenhouse gas pollution? Well, in 2001, Frank Luntz, a communications expert, advised George Bush, the American president, reframe the message. Don't talk about global warming. Talk about climate change. And it was a really clever move. When we talk about the climate, it feels distant. It's up there. You can't blame the climate for changing. It's not a person. You can't hold the climate to account. The climate is a natural system that is being destroyed by greenhouse gas pollution. Why do we even say greenhouse gas emissions? I know I don't, but we generally say greenhouse gas emissions. I mean, an emission is just something that goes into the air. It might be bad or not. Because the fossil fuel industry works very hard to make sure we say emissions, not pollution. Pollution is bad. They don't want us to say that. When you know it's greenhouse gas pollution, you know there's a polluter. You can find that polluter. And when you find that polluter, you can stop that polluter. If we want to save the climate, we have to stop greenhouse gas pollution. And if we want to stop greenhouse gas pollution, we have to stop the fossil fuel industry. And we have to do it now. We're running out of time. One way to do it is to use law, the power of law. And so I'd just like to tell you a little bit more about the work in Guyana. But before I do that, just let me give you a little background. ExxonMobil has found oil 190 kilometers offshore Guyana. The oil is 1 to 2 kilometers below the seabed, and the ocean itself is about 1.6 kilometers deep. So this is really dangerous deep water drilling. The oil deal with ExxonMobil is financially disastrous for Guyana. But the government, like governments everywhere, the government keeps on giving approvals for Exxon to produce oil. And this is really important for Exxon. They say that they're building their future on 3 things: the Permian Basin, plastics, and Guyana. ExxonMobil needs Guyana. Guyana does not need ExxonMobil, and we aim to save Guyana and all of us in this room from ExxonMobil's operations offshore Guyana. So none of this is climate litigation. Hampus mentioned the case where we cut the permits down to 20 years. And basically, the Environmental Protection Agency had issued these permits. We said, no way, you can't do that. We went to court, we cut the permits down to 5 years, and Exxon thought they had a permit until 2043. Permit, one of those permits will now expire next year in April, and they've got to go back. They've got to go back and reapply and go through the entire process all over again. And the Guyanese people are going to object. They're going to say, no, we don't want this. We don't want this drilling. We don't want this permit. You can't do this. If, and it's a big if, but if they stop that permit, ExxonMobil will have to stop drilling in that part of the field, and that will cost them billions of dollars. Now, the next case I'd like to tell you about, it's often called the biggest climate change case in the world. Why? Because in that case, we're challenging over 11 billion barrels of ExxonMobil's proposed oil production and billions of cubic meters of gas. This is a 5 billion ton carbon bomb. We don't want that to go off. Now, I've said it's regarded as the biggest climate change case in the world, but actually it's not framed as a climate change case. It's framed as a pollution case. We say that burning Guyana's oil and gas will release greenhouse gases, which will pollute the atmosphere and cause climate change, etc., etc. We also say that carbon dioxide, a greenhouse gas, when it dissolves in the ocean, makes the ocean acid. Now, if you see the problem as climate change up there, it's quite difficult to deal with ocean acidification here. The two are very different. And this is the case that's brought under the Constitution and the provision that Hampus mentioned. I persuaded Parliament to put a right to a healthy environment into the Constitution. It's in the enforceable section of the Constitution. It's actually a fundamental right. Now, we've asked the judge to say that this oil production will result in harm to the environment, and that's a violation of the right to a healthy environment. If the judge agrees with us, ExxonMobil is going to have to stop oil and gas production everywhere in Guyana. Thank you. Guess what? ExxonMobil doesn't like this case. They want to strike it out. They say, this is not fact. This is opinion, scientific opinion. Greenhouse gas pollution, climate change, global warming, ocean acidification, rising sea levels, melting ice caps, that's not fact. Does that sound ridiculous? Yeah. This is 2023. School children know about fossil fuels and the impacts. Children are going to court over climate change. But if we have to bring scientists, we will. Although we've said in court, asking us to bring experts, scientific experts, to say what everybody already knows, is a bit like telling us, bring experts to prove that the Earth is round and we don't live on a flat Earth. We've literally put that into the court. Now, we've filed another 4 cases. These challenge the petroleum production licenses, other permits, gas flaring, and the gas pipeline. And any one of those, as and when we win, will mean that Exxon has to stop production, and it will cost them billions of dollars. So none of this is climate change. This is all about going after the legal rules and forcing the company to change its behavior. It's basically a rule of law approach. And it resonates with other lawyers around the world. I was absolutely thrilled this year when the Commonwealth Lawyers Association, which is lawyers from more than 50 countries, gave me the Commonwealth Rule of Law Award in recognition of this work that we're doing to halt fossil fuels. Now, we're not a big organization. It's a handful of lawyers. We're nimble, we're fast. I've just realized the slides are in the wrong order, but that's okay. And when we go to court, we face Exxon. There's usually 2 or 3 of us, and we face ExxonMobil, Chinese National Offshore Oil Company, and Hess Corporation, which are their partners, the Attorney General of Guyana, the Minister of Natural Resources, and the Environmental Protection Agency, and all the backup that they have. And this slide sort of neatly illustrates what's going on. In the corner for Fighting for Guyana, the cartoonist says, is the judge from the very first case I mentioned. That's a really big guy, and he really is that big. The little cross person in the middle is me. And the last box, the 4 guys on the side of ExxonMobil and against Guyana, we have the Attorney General of Guyana, we have the head of ExxonMobil in Guyana, we have the former president of Guyana, and we have the vice president of Guyana. And if you're wondering what they're wearing, the cartoonist has put them in nappies. Sorry, you can see them there. So we're using the rule of law to stop fossil fuel production as best we can. But is that enough? Is it actually enough to just stop fossil fuels and stop greenhouse gas pollution? I came home one day to find that my neighbors had piled up their garbage and they were burning it. My house on the grass verge outside my house. My house is wood. they'd put the bonfire up against the telegraph pole. The telegraph pole is wood. Actually, I think it's probably a telephone pole these days. Anyway, it was wood. You can imagine the conversation that took place. They haven't burnt any more garbage. They haven't dumped any more garbage there. And it's now very beautiful. This is actually what it looks like from where they had it before. And then you can just see my house behind the trees. So we do have to take the greenhouse gas pollution out, but how? I mean, sometimes this can seem very daunting. But we're already doing it. Guyana, as Hampus mentioned, is a carbon sink. Guyana's forests take out 150 million tons of carbon every single year. Imagine if every country in the world was a carbon sink, what a difference that would make. Now, when I talk about the forests, I don't just mean the trees. I mean the whole thing, the whole wonderful ecosystem that makes up the forest, starting underground from that magical world of fungi that Toby told us about this morning, to ground and water dwellers like this anaconda. She weighs nearly 250 kilos. She'll wrap herself around you and swallow you. She has 4 sets of backward-facing teeth. You're not coming back out. And from the ground, right up to the canopy, all that wonderful life, right up to the harpy eagle. She has a wingspan of nearly 2 meters. She's the strongest eagle in the world. She's also known as a flying wolf. Now, when governments want to protect forests, sometimes what they do is they say to all the indigenous peoples, you go out, you have to go. Local communities, out you go, out you go, out you go. That's not good. I worked with an indigenous community on forest protection, and we did the exact opposite. So first, we worked and we got their title to the land, title to the entire land. It's bigger than Luxembourg, by the way. And then we set up a legal protected area over it, which they control. So if you want to go in, you have to get permission from them, not the government. They protect the forests take out the carbon. Should they be paid? I think so. Well, you may know that the government of Guyana decided to do a carbon credit scheme with, I said scream, it probably is scream, carbon credit scheme with Hess Corporation, an oil company. I'm not even going to discuss that bit of it. Including the community's forests. I think that's unconstitutional. I think that's illegal. And I wrote to the president and I told him so. So where we are now is we need to get this right. And that means we need to have the financial experts who can get the concept right and put the right financial structures in place so that the community can actually be paid for genuine carbon removal. And that can be rolled out to other indigenous communities across Guyana. The legal infrastructure is in place. Years ago, I wrote the law that guarantees indigenous land rights and ensures that those carbon removal services actually are owned by the community, not by the government. Now, it's good to protect the forests, but in fact, the biggest carbon sink of all is the ocean, and we have to take the carbon out of the ocean. And again, this sounds very daunting, but it's happening. Our more than human companions are already doing it. A great whale will sequester 33 tons of carbon in her body. Seagrasses and other marine life are taking carbon out. All we have to do is love them and learn to live with them in harmony. Okay, I know. In the real world, you need money. Exactly. How about if we change our mindset? How about we don't see nature anymore as a resource to be exploited, but we see nature as something really valuable, natural capital. There are people in this room who already know how to value the carbon sequestration services of a great whale. And as I said, I don't really like to think of it in this way, but if that's what will save life, if that's what will save the ocean, if that's what will save us, then let's just do it. I know we can do natural capital in Guyana. I changed the law so that it's in there, and the Environmental Protection Agency has a duty to produce accounts recording the natural capital of Guyana. And I later changed the constitution to include a principle that the well-being of the nation depends upon clean air, fertile soils, pure water, and the rich biodiversity of plants, animals, and ecosystems. That's really a statement of human dependence on natural capital. So the next step would be for us to find the right people to design the business case for a marine protected area. It's got to be a business case. I love the ocean, but that doesn't matter. We have to show that this can work, and we need the finance people to do that. And we already have some of the legal infrastructure in place. I drafted the Protected Areas Act some years ago, so there's something there to start with. So I've shared with you how moving from seeing climate change as the problem to seeing greenhouse gas pollution as the problem has had a really powerful impact on my work. The next time you say, or you want to say climate change, let me ask you to say greenhouse gas pollution instead and see what impact that has. We know the fossil fuel industry is killing the earth with greenhouse gas pollution. Let's just call it out for what it is. We have to stop that greenhouse gas pollution. We've run out of time. Everybody in this room, I keep saying room, but you know what I mean, everybody here today has knowledge and skills and experience that can be used to stop greenhouse gas pollution now. And everybody has skills and knowledge and experience that can help us to get to the removing that historic pollution that has been pumped up there over the last 100 years. This earth is the only home that our species has ever had. With courage, with love, with imagination, with intelligence, we can and we will save our home. Thank you.
I'm so incredibly proud of the 4 people we're getting to come here to be keynote speakers. It's really cool. Now